Okay, we'll call this meeting of the IID Board of Directors to order. It's approximately 1:20. This is the date's April 2nd, 2013. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Simmons, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Simmons, do we have any actions to be reported that were taken in closed session?
We have no items to report, Mr. President.
Okay, board members, we're taking a look at the approval of the agenda as presented today.
I would ask that we pull item B and bring it back for the next board meeting.
Okay, if I hear you right, that's item B, item 1B in the consent
Yes.
area of the agenda, page 7.
Yeah, item 14. I need to make some corrections.
So we'll be pulling the minutes for March 12th, 2013 of the regular meeting of the IID board, and we'll be addressing those at a later meeting. Correct?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, looking for approval of the agenda today, board.
Motion to approve.
Motion from Director Hanks.
I second that motion.
We have a second from Director Glindo. Please vote. Okay, the agenda as amended by tabling item 1B, the March 12th regular meeting minutes, has been accepted. We'll go into public comments at this time. This is a public meeting, and this is a time for public comment. At this time, you may address the board on items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the IID, but not an item on the agenda. Those who wish to address the board should come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Any action taken as a result of public comments shall be limited to direction to staff. Mr. Ramos.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. President. Tony Ramos, Central Resident. About 5 hours ago, I was about 30 miles inside of Mexico. And I figured, how do I get here with the long lines? Well, I just got up earlier and got in time, and the line to the border was short, and I'm here. And there are good people over there, as Mr. Kuhn has said before, people that he's helped, people that I've helped too. One thing I do have to say is that during the campaign election, Mr. Benson said in his billboards, cut spending, reduce rates. And then he said, honesty, integrity, and commitment. Mr. Kuhn said, common sense and leadership. I pledge to protect and serve the people of Imperial County. Sometimes I feel that I'm included in that, but sometimes because I do step up here and I'm critical of some of the board members, don't take it personal. It's about you. It's not about you, the personal life. It's about your public life. And I'm glad that Mr. Benson has at least kept quiet. Mr. Kuhn hasn't, but you know what? At least he came over and shook my hand, and I appreciate that, Bruce. You know, we can agree to disagree, but deep down we have no hatred or resentment towards each other, because I have family, you have family, and we should respect each other. All I have to say is that the last time I protested against Mr. Desert, I had my signs here. I didn't bring them today because there's a time and a place for it. I protested with the same signs out here. I protested with the same signs in front of the Farm Bureau, in front of the courthouse. And then I called Jason Jackson and told him I was going to protest in front of the City Hall, and I did. What happened? Nothing, because they were peaceful and nonviolent, and it's my right to do that. Any city that has a public place, I can protest. And that wasn't the case before. That's why I called Jason Jackson, because before the code enforcement people came rudely and wanted to tear up my signs. And I said, do you guys know what you're doing when you tell me you're going to tear up my signs? So we'll take them out and tear them out. I said, well, if you do, you're going to get in trouble, because I already called the city manager. I already called chief of police and told them what's going on. Anyway, they laid back and let me protest. All I'm saying, people, whatever happens when I come up here, it's not about me, it's about the people and what I feel we represent. I've been coming here, Bruce, since you were a board member before, before when the water issue passed back in 2003, I think. And I'm going to keep coming in, and believe me, I never see myself on TV. I never see that myself. I never get these funny feelings about, oh, look at how I look, because really I don't have a good, I'm not very photogenic, and I think on TV I'm not that way either, and I don't leave well enough alone. And as far as I'm concerned, I want to thank the board for at least allowing me to speak, and take it from me, a person that's been up here all the time, that comes here all the time. It's not about your public, personal life, it's about your public life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos. Mr. Abadi?
Yeah, good afternoon. This is time to talk about the water allocation. I was going to bring up a few points that having difficulty with. We have a water allocation that's been proposed of 5.45 acre foot, and there's been different dates been kicked around for starting this water allocation. Well, the water allocation date is January 1, the usage, but there's this idea about starting to enforce it either January 1 or a different date. The date proposed was May 1st, and we already have an allocation to create a separate date. If you go into May 1st, like it or not, you create a second allocation. The second allocation will be made either favorably for some farmers or disfavorably for the others. Depends how they use water. So, yes?
Is this going to be part of number 4 on information?
Yeah.
Do you want to defer until we hear the recommendations, so what you're saying will dovetail into that?
Sure.
Yeah, Alex, we have a short agenda. And,
I didn't know how it worked, so I want to make sure I
It'll
jump
be the
out
first
front.
information item. That way you're not limited to any time constraints.
Sure. So, okay, I'll wait. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Board member comments. We'll start this morning with Director Benson.
I don't have an April Fool's joke, so I'll pass on this one, sir.
Director Galindo.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. On March 27th, I attended an RDA meeting in Calexico. And of concern to me, which I'd like to convey to you, was a gentleman and his wife who came to public comment. Lives in the area of the 2600 block, well, 2630 actually, on Evan Hughes, on West Evan Hughes. He had two concerns to convey. Longtime resident of Imperial County. Concern number one was that he had advocated for the project, the solar project in Ocotillo. Was reassured about the number of jobs, and he decided to follow up on it. And of course, no one was able to tell him how many people are now employed there. This seems to be an ongoing misunderstanding that when we have projects such as this one, and they mentioned 300 jobs, somehow the fact that these are 300 temporary jobs gets lost in the shuffle. So he was very troubled about that. Secondly, the fact that there is a great deal of talk of the possibility of another manure plant coming in within his geographical area, and he is not able to access any information from the county or from us. I do not know of such plans for this plant. He obviously does, because the person that lives next to him is the one that's, or not, that owns the property next to him, rather, that is planning this project. But I would urge Mr. Kelly or any of the staff that if we have any knowledge regarding that it be brought forth immediately, because this seemed to be a real concern to this gentleman. Thank you.
So that's a manure burning power plant? And Mr. Stills, you can catch up with Mrs. Galindo about this later.
Yeah, we'll talk later. The only one I know is the one out there on the highway, so we'll look and see if there's some substance to that on Evan Hughes.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Director Kuhn?
When the day started, I thought the trust lands were paid for, and then I was told in a meeting before this meeting that no, they weren't. And I am just very, very happy to report to you people that the trust lands are paid for. So that's done. And to me, it was very good news. And then it was also relayed to me this morning that if you're an outsider looking in, and when I say outsider, I mean just outside the IID, but people that live in the community, the farm community, there's a perception out there that we, the IID, are trying to position ourselves to take over the financial obligation of restoring and or mitigating the sea, and I have to report that that is just not the case. I mean, the state of California is contractually obligated to take care of the sea, and I said it here today, there's not enough money in this deal for IID to take care of that sea. There's not enough money. There's not enough money for the mitigation, let alone the restoration. Now, the state took that obligation. Unless they find somebody else or someone else steps up, take over, just rest assured that no one in this IID is willing to take on that responsibility. Now, we want to see it done, but there's no one on this board that wants to take on the financial responsibility for it. But again, we do want to see it done, but it's not going to be on our dime.
Director Hanks?
I'd like to ask the board to join me in the following consideration of the State Water Resources Control Board petition. I would ask the board to place the petition on hold until the new attorney of record has time to review the filings and the SEIR report, and wait for his report back to this board of his recommendations on how to handle that petition. I'm particularly concerned about it because I believe it is counter to our settlement talks on restoration. Thank you.
Just to clarify, that new attorney of record on the petition,
Yes.
Water petition is?
Yeah, the petition before the State Water Resources Control Board is a petition that would not permit, but to withhold water from the Salton Sea beginning in 2014 to 2017 in exchange for moving that water elsewhere for funding to help offset some of the mitigation issues of the sea. I'm very concerned that the petition is moving too quick towards the concept that the sea would not be feasible to restore, or maybe not even worthy of restoration, which I do not believe is the position of this board.
And that attorney of record now that's handling that?
The attorney of record now is Law Planning Resource Agency.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hanks. I don't have any comments today. General Manager comments, Kevin?
No, sir.
Legal counsel comments, Ross?
No, sir.
Okay, this moves us into the consent area of our agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. One sub-item has been pulled. So we have approval of board minutes for March 5th, 2013, and approval of board minutes for March 19th, 2013. The second item is the approval of the generator interconnection agreement between IID and Soul Orchard regarding a 7-megawatt photovoltaic facility at the San Diego State University in Brawley. And the third item on consent is the denial of 2 claims submitted by the following claimants, Harold Telford and Robert Finley. Board, you've had time to review the consent items. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Director Kuhn. Is there a second? Second from Director Benson. Further questions? Call for the vote. Okay, the consent items are all passed, except for the item 1B, Gloria, that will be coming back to us at the next meeting. This moves us into the information area of the agenda. First information item is information item 4, is a review and discussion of recommendations from the Water Conservation Committee meeting of March 27th, 2013, page 86 of your agenda.
Good afternoon, board members. The Water Conservation Committee met last week, and they took several actions to recommend to this board. The first one that they talked about and they recommended, that they will recommend when it comes to you, is that the implementation of the apportionment program start on May 1st, that the amount of apportionment on an annual basis beginning January 1st is at 5.45 acre-feet per acre, and that beginning on May 1st, the way that the subsequent be based on the total amount of water left that had, in other words, that has not been utilized up to that date, would be spread out among all of the eligible acres. And so you would start out then with everybody having an equal amount. They also talked about how the water clearinghouse would be carried out. And they talked about that when people would request water, there would be a pot of water that was requested, a total amount of water that was requested, and there would be a total amount of water that was turned back. On a monthly basis, they would take all the water that was turned back and they would distribute it to the people that wanted water on a prorated basis. In other words, they would not for instance, if I asked for 1 acre-foot per acre, I may only get half that much, or whatever was in the pot that was turned back. And those are basically the 4 items that they agreed on. We're meeting this week on Thursday, and we're hoping to get all of them to make the recommendations so that we can bring the actual policy back to this board as soon as possible for action, and to get the CEQA process started. I think we also had the stakeholder meetings, which went pretty well, to get all the information out to our water users regarding of all these issues that were coming up. We couldn't answer a lot of questions, but we are in the process of we took all of the questions that were asked that we could not answer at the time, and we're going to try to answer them and put them on the website. And then we'll also have the Farm Bureau is having their drain shed meetings in May, and we'll also probably hand them out at that point, besides being on the website. Is there any questions on that?
So Jesse, the recap, that's 5.45 feet is the allocation.
On an annual basis.
Annual basis, looking at a kickoff date of May 1st.
Yes.
And where there's been much discussion about is how do we account for that water from January 1st to May 1st?
Well, again, what they agreed on was that it would be whatever is used up to that point would be deducted from the total, and then it would be reapportioned, basically.
Right.
Beginning on that date.
But regardless of the kickoff date, the allocation is for the year 2013.
Yes, it ends at the end of the year, yes.
Ends at the end of the year. And there was many dates discussed at the meetings about kicking it off, being retroactive to January 1st, or what day it would start off.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of discussion, but again, the committee voted, and that's what they voted for.
But regardless of the kickoff date, everybody's going to receive the maximum of 5.45 feet allocation.
Less what was used.
What's that?
Less what's been used.
Less what's been used, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions, board? Mr. Abadi.
Okay, back to the allocation. Any date other than the January 1st date, let's say April 1st to July or August, creates another allocation. Like it or not, it does. Because if someone doesn't use water or uses more water at different periods of time, who's the farmer? It creates another allocation. So there's a windfall or a failure to someone. So you created 2 allocations if you do anything other than January 1st. And that's favorable to some or unfavorable to the other, depends the date. No farmer can disagree by saying if a January 1st date starts, how does that treat them unequitably? Now, if you move it to May or you move it to July, there's going to be hands raised. Well, this favors me, this doesn't favor me, and it creates another problem. The problem exists, and it's not going to go away. It's 5.45 acre feet. We can account for it. So it's not a part of math or how to account for it. And no one can disagree that it affects them any indifferently starting January 1st. Besides the date of moving it past January 1st, it creates a second problem. The second problem is, which we don't want to have happen, May 1st date, a July date, will create abuse because innate in itself, a farmer is going to look at his ranches, looks at his fields, and if a field is close to needing water but doesn't need water, automatically that May 1st date becomes a deadline because you're going to socialize water. So there's going to be a lot of water used between April 27th and May 1st. Well, April 27th to May 30th. A lot of orders are going to come in the last week. Real or imagined needed. And that's not for what we're going here. We're trying to conserve water and just run businesses. And so basically that's why I'm opposed to it. Not because it's what works for my farm or works for someone else's farm. It's it doesn't create consistent to what the goals are. It creates indifference and problems. That's all I got. Thank you.
Mr. Abadi, so what you're saying is the time period from January 1st until the kickoff of the allocation, May 1st in this case. How do we account for that water? Right now, it's talked of being socialized, where everybody will have the same amount of water on their use card.
Well, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody knows arithmetic and math. Mm-hmm. We already get what we have used.
And there's been talk out there of tracking this individually by field.
But it's already being tracked by field.
Right.
I mean, these things already
accounting
exist.
for it by field.
It's already exist. I mean, there's nothing new being set up here. Mm-hmm. We've tracked it by field. It's no one likes it, so you get the no likes away, and that's just what we got to live with. But we can account for it. We know what we have, and we just live with it. I mean, it's what we're living with anyway. If you socialize it at a different point, you're going to live with it there, and then you're going to live with the aftermath of this being good or this being bad, depending who the farmer is.
And you feel that a more fair way to do the math on here was to just kick it off on January 1st. That way there's nobody effectively gaming the system, trying to order water before the kickoff date. And plus it holds every field accountable by the methods that the IID uses for their water accounting.
I don't. It's more than fair. It's the only way you can do it. You created already an allocation, and nobody likes it. I think everybody raises their hand. Nobody likes it. How are you going to like another allocation?
January 1st, 2015.
It's going to create even more friction in between farmers. And then you create this, you called it gaming, I'll use the word gaming, of using the last week of April to abuse water. Well, I think that's against what we're supposed to be doing. And so what's wrong with watching out for water? April 1st, April 2nd. That's what we're supposed to be doing. It's what we need to do as a whole group.
Thank you, Mr. Abadi.
Thank you.
I've got a question for you, Alex.
Okay, Mr. Hanks?
You mentioned arithmetic and math. I hope you're giving credit to your 8th grade teacher.
Yeah. Yes, I am, Mr. Hanks.
I got a couple questions.
Okay.
You remember the exam? I always had a brain teaser on there, so I've got one for you. I need you to answer for me.
Well, I might not be able to answer, but go ahead.
All right, you were plenty sharp. You mentioned about an additional allocation. One of the questions that I'm being asked from growers that have opted not to attend some of the meetings are the ones that are coming out of the fallowing program, and they come out June 30th. And so what is going to be their allocation for the remainder of the year?
Well,
It's not the same that everybody else is being prescribed May 1st.
well, what nobody likes the 5.45 acre foot, but that's just what it is. So we have to live with that. And it goes back just to math again. If they came up with the solution, I think you're saying here, let's do a couple examples, make them real simple. Someone applied for the fallowing program, and it was a perfect world for them, and that field was 5.45 acre foot, so it's a no effect. Okay, so he scores no effect. Another one shows up, Farmer B, that fallowed the ground, and it's 2 acre foot. Well, in the plan that I understand is that he'll be, you take the first half of the year, that's over. So you take the second half, so if it's 5.45 acre foot, basically you're going to get 2.725, something like that. And so you got 2.7.
Whatever they were paid on, that would come off.
Right. But then they get bonuses. They get bonus points on the backside if they had only 2 acre foot. So if they had a 2 acre foot, they were paid on 2 acre foot for the fallowing. That leaves 3.45, right? They don't get any credit for the first half. The second half, from January 1st forward, they get half of that credit, and they got credit water because they didn't use up when they sold the water. But if someone sold 6 acre foot, okay, now you go, they're a negative. They owe water, but not for the first half, not from July 1st to December 31st, but from January 1st forward, that's 3 acre foot and half of that. So they owe about a 0.2, well, let me see here.
0.45.
Yeah. And so they owe a very minor amount of water back to the allocation. So that's treated with just same way as math going forward. They don't have to like what we're in, but we're in what we're in. And we need to address it just with math.
One of the problems, and it's not necessarily just for you, Alex, but for the audience, one of the problems that we're wrestling with, is the landowner who leased his property out, say, for a produce crop. And maybe they use over their half of that allocation, which means the next person that assumes that lease has a very small amount of water. So, for example, if someone used 4 acre foot to finish their produce crop, then that would only leave them the 1.45 for the remainder of the year.
Well,
so this whole process is pitting some landlords against tenants and so forth. That will work itself out. Probably after the first year, it'll all be considered into the formation of leases. But in the middle of the year, it does create an additional problem that we're having to deal with.
Well, that'd be so, but if someone's leasing, it's no different than someone leasing or farming their ground. If someone's leasing the ground for a produce crop, they're compensated to farm that produce crop. Like it or not, they are compensated. And so I don't think the board of directors here can run everybody's business. I think it's impossible for you to sit here and say, I'm going to feel bad for this group or feel bad for this group. Why don't you just feel bad for all of them? That's okay. Then everybody wakes up and get their calculators out, because that's what it is. There's a lot of feeling bad, and there's a lot of reorganizing. But the board of directors didn't do this. The farmers used the water. We used up over our usages last year and the year before, caused the problem. So we have to address the problem the same way. Everybody's going to have little problems in their thing. We just have to rework what we have to do. And, hopefully that farmer that showed up, that leased some of his ground out, has some other ground that he didn't use so much water, and he has to work that back out himself. But you can keep moving the dates, and at the end of the day, I think the worst thing we can do is abuse water. I think that's the worst thing. By creating a separate date, you abuse water, and that's not in the consciousness of what we're doing. We're looking at conserving water. And moving the date from January 1st forward, you're going to have different hands going up in the room, how it treated each person indifferently. But nobody can raise their hand by starting January 1 and saying, did you get treated indifferently? No, the only hand will be raised up, I don't like it, and you should have told me ahead of time. But that's the same answer for everybody in that room. I don't like it, and you should have told me ahead of time. It's consistent.
You used to argue with me like that in class. Let me ask you something. 2 years you got to take parting shots at me at school. So I get one at you. How many kids do you have, Alex?
I got 4.
I was right. I told you someday you would learn how to multiply.
Thank you, Mr. Hanks. Anybody else has any questions or?
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Any other comments from the audience, the public? Board, once again, have any questions and discussion?
No, I just, this is just an example of what we're having to deal with. And any way you look at it, there's issues, and we're going to be challenged with making a decision that impacts the fewest people. I mean, especially this first year. Alex is right. We have a problem. We have to find a solution to it.
So as you know, Director Hanks, and you, Director Benson, that meeting last week in which these actions were taken by the committee lasted 4 hours. And to Mr. Abadi's point, that was a dilemma for the committee about how to account for the elapsed part of the year. And I think that it's one of those tough decisions in which you are deciding which of the options is the least onerous. So the only thing I can offer at this point is that the IID board has yet to vote on anything, and the committee meets next on Thursday, and there is a CEQA process, however abbreviated, that still has to take place. So committee meeting, I can only tell you that those concerns have been raised, and that IID did put it to the committee that we could account for the water in either of those ways.
And that next committee meeting is, Mr. Kelly?
Is Thursday.
This Thursday?
At the water control.
At 1 o'clock, 1:30?
At 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, 1:30.
Would you be kind enough to, I will ask, to perhaps revisit this one more time and see if they want to move it or keep it where it's at?
Well, it's been discussed several times at the committee level. They've taken the vote amongst themselves. So it's actually initially proposed as a January date. It was not voted favorably on, and then it was moved to July, and it was not voted favorably on, and they kind of met in the middle in May. The thought was that the sooner we get it started, the better, So as soon as that date can come, there was some reluctance of staff to do anything in April just because of the timing of it. It's hard to get everything done. So that's why the May date actually came about from my recollection. And I share a lot of your concerns. We've have leases that are coming back to us July 1st. We're actually taking over some ground July 1st. We don't know what the water availability is left on that ground. We can't even get access records for it because we're not the water card holder until we sign the lease and it becomes effective. But I actually did support a January date initially, just from the standpoint that I think after our first meeting on December 7th and soon into January, we were talking about this issue. Everyone was aware of it. The people that it really affected were the ones that planted early wheat or out of produce. They had wheat contracts and they had to satisfy those, but I think it's a small part of their total pie. They're really concerned about next year's vegetable crops or this year's vegetable towards the end of the year, where the guys that are getting hurt, I think, are the guys that have held off on Bermuda, held off on planting Sudan because they didn't want to use up too much water early, trying to help everybody else out. But we just have to wait and see. I think just looking at the numbers, the way that we allocate our fallowing, and we've actually been underusing based on, we might be equal on the river, but we've actually accounted for a lot more water than we would have used typically, just the way that we count fallowing early in the process and not later. So the one thing that I want to bring up is we do need programs not only to save water, but to use water here at the IID when we run into an underrun year. And, whether it's storage, whether it's beneficial use on the farms, I'm proposing that we look at a leaching program that would run through the fall, early winter, so that people could actually get cheaper water to use up our allocation and provide a benefit to the farms. I know that I would subscribe to that, and I don't know how it affects our fallowed ground, but that would actually be good ground to use water on, because it is dry and it would crack easily, and we would have to talk about, if you're getting paid to conserve water on ground, do you also get a benefit to use water on that ground that's not farming anything? But I think particularly the IID ground that hasn't been farmed well over the past, it would benefit from some serious leaching. And if you've ever tried to farm it, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. So I share a lot of your concerns as well.
I think, Mr. Bott, if you show up to that meeting and bring that forward for discussion, that would cover some of the board's concerns about getting it out in front of the committee again. Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to item 5 under information. This is the consideration of the general manager's plan of work for 2013.
Yes, President Desert, members of the board, this is your first look back at this document from when it appeared on an agenda, I believe, in January. There are 2 additions to the first section under water rights initiatives and advocacy. I do want to point them out to the board. Under letter E, as a means of dealing with projected shortages on the Colorado River system, ensure a sufficient water supply to meet the needs of its water users, satisfy its many obligations as a responsible water contractor, and safeguard the district's long-standing and invaluable water right. The general manager will, in the first 6 months of 2013, preview for the IID board a concrete plan to secure and develop the most viable water storage sites within the irrigation service territory. In the course of these stakeholder meetings, numerous water users asked about the disparity between the penalty that is assigned to IID when it overruns and the lack of any credit when there's an underrun. So clearly, the missing element here at IID is storage, meaningful storage, that is tens of thousands of acre feet in any given water year. So this initiative here seeks to address that, and I have spoken to the board in closed session about it. I expect to come back to you at a later date with a more definitive plan. Directly beneath item E, also under water rights initiatives and advocacy, letter F, and I will read it as well. Owing to the time-bound nature of sensitive and ongoing settlement talks between IID and Imperial County during the stay of a tentative decision in the quantification settlement agreement coordinated cases, and more specifically having to do with the open-ended question of Salton Sea restoration, the General Manager will, in the first 6 months of 2013, develop a going-forward strategy that maximizes district-owned land assets and known renewable energy sources in the Salton Sea resource area, and will serve as the basis for both economic development of the region and a key component of what will become a continuing funding mechanism for restoration. If the board has any questions about that item specifically or anything else in the document, I will try to respond. If not, then we will leave it to the board to come back with any additions or subtractions, and this will appear again at your April 23rd meeting for some action.
I assume by the district-owned land assets and the renewable resources, you're referring to, but not limited to, algae, mining, geothermal, and solar?
And perhaps others.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, actually. It was in further back in the document. It's talking about public outreach, and you talk about a communications council setting up for 60 days. We're at 90 days now, and I didn't know if that's been started, or is that an internal group?
I recall that, but where does it show up?
Page 91. Public outreach A.
That has actually occurred, especially among the Colorado River community.
Okay.
The committee or the council has actually turned into more of a staff function, and that's not what is meant here. So I do think there still needs to be a formal body that is tasked with this, and I've yet to bring it to you.
Okay. And then the other thing I would like you to add, if this is the place, let me know, but we've talked about staff and how to motivate them and how to move them up through the ranks and to put together a plan for advancement, if you will, throughout the district in different departments, and then also just in training of staff, and maybe it's through a tuition reimbursement program, or I've talked to San Diego State as well. They're setting up a renewable energy training center in Brawley, and maybe that's a place that we can make not only staff aware, but then bring in outsiders that could be potential employees in the future. But it would really start with from how we hire someone to how they get trained through the process of being a qualified IID employee and learning different roles. My dad always talks about management trainee in the AT&T program. They would hire people in all the best colleges every year and then just push them through the organization. I don't know if we have that capacity here at the IID to hire that many people, but there are a lot of unfilled spots because we're always trying to find the perfect person to fill that spot. And I think a lot of times if you find a good person, they could always change their stripes and fill a spot if they understand the organization. So I would like to see a push towards a integrated HR, looking to fill spots and drawing the talent from within and training people we have.
So that has come up, and the range is anywhere from cross training between departments to succession planning generally, but specifically the subject of a tuition reimbursement program. That has been broached with the board, and with the board's indulgence, we would fold that into the goal that you mentioned.
Okay.
And house it under the HR function.
Director Galindo.
Mr. Kelly, I'd also encourage you to, we talk about San Diego State quite a bit, but there are employees that may not be near the time to work on a bachelor's, and we need to be inclusive of the community college. One of the things that concerns me about the college, and has concerned me for quite some time, is that they really aren't looking at what the workforce demands are going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years. They talk about it, but they don't seem to sit down and say, this is what we need, and these are the certificate programs we need to implement and go through with them. And I'm not sure that they would do it on their own, but if you come through with what we need as an institution, either for initial or continuing education, perhaps that will get them moving. So I urge you to do that, please.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Kelly?
No, I just, on the outreach, I'd just like to add that Saturday, Chuck DeMars came and was the guest speaker at the American Citizens Club, sitting of their officers, gave a very well-received report on our water situation and the value of our water locally. We'd like to encourage you to continue on with that process.
You know, thank you for refreshing my memory. I do believe in that specific context, Director Benson, that we were talking about not only stakeholders but the river community, and that it would be both inside and outside. And it was supposed to be that Mr. DeMars, and at the time the Plan B, would be folded into our own staff-driven efforts.
Okay.
And that event, Director Hanks at the American Citizens Club, was a very well attended, a very successful event. Much positive feedback is what I've heard from those in the attendance. Other comments or questions for Mr. Kelly?
I just had a question regarding the updates on this. Are you going to give us quarterly updates? Because a number of these did have date-specific items, and I didn't know if there's a checklist that we check off.
So my recollection is that all of them had, either a number of days or a number of quarters in which they're supposed to be achieved.
You're done with 90%.
Well, I don't think that's the case, but I think the next time that you would expect to hear from me would be conveniently in summertime.
Okay.
Mr. Kelly, under board governance and ethical reporting, now that Mr. Simmons is aboard and that's his expertise, I think we ought to take advantage of him.
I have spoken to Mr. Simmons about pressing him into service as the de facto ethics officer and relieving Mr. Taylor of that responsibility. And he's agreed.
And for the public, we do have a training tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Is that an ethics training?
It's 3 o'clock, and it's the Mr. Oswald will be presenting.
3 o'clock in this room here.
It's a public meeting.
Public meeting. Okay, any other comments or question? Kevin? Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Moving on to information item 6, Water Department General Matters. Mr. Silva?
To report is on our water use. It's staying about the same close to where we should be at this time of the year. As we move along and get more history, we'll be able to get a better indication of our end of the year usage. But right now, it's staying about the same, about even where we should be.
Yeah. There's a recent report that's been sent around that showed that we are a little bit above our order by some 3,000 feet. Is it?
Yeah, but again, it's still within.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's noise level. Yeah.
Right. Yes, it is, Jesse. And then on that same report, we are servicing some mitigation water to the Salton Sea throughout the year. Can you tell us how many acre feet that'll be this year?
Total, I don't know the total. Tina has that total number.
The 2013 calendar obligation is 70,000 acre feet, providing we match the efficiency schedule of 20,000 acre feet and the fallowing schedule of 70,000 acre feet.
So that's 70,000 acre feet that's going to be going to the sea. Are we going to have to conserve that and fallow for that?
Correct. And I think we've sent about 10,000 acre feet to date.
Mr. Silva, are you currently, or did you, within the last couple of days, release mitigation water to the sea?
I can't answer that, but we do as we have an opportunity to do so. Why, the river's up again?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we probably did. And usually it's like on the weekends when we have extra water and things like that, yeah.
Boy, the phone starts ringing.
So that water that Director Kuhn's speaking about, Tina, that's the Salton Sea mitigation water?
Yes.
And that water flows through the New River to the Salton Sea, and the Alamo, or just the New River?
Mostly the New River, but wherever they can find a good spot to put it in. The best spills that we have that we can measure well are on the All-American. That's why that's the best way to do it.
And is that the favorite spill there? Is that by the siphon pipe?
Yes, that spill right there, New River siphon, yes.
Any other questions for Jesse?
Jesse, in one of the minutes from our meeting a month ago, you said in 2 weeks you were going to get the on-farm contracts out, and I just wanted to get a status update on those.
We have not done it. You've kept Joanna so busy that she hasn't had time to get back on her scheduled work. So I'm sorry to say that we do not have those contracts because we're still waiting for that. So I'm not sure now if I can tell you when we will have them. But we are continuing to at least talk to the folks about the...
Is there a reason the board can't preview them?
What we have now, the draft?
Yeah. Because no one's seen them as far as I know.
No, it's true. Is Joanna here?
On taking those to the board in April, but the direction that we had previously received in the fall was to first take them to the WCAB.
Yeah.
So we have plans to schedule a subcommittee meeting and then the WCAB meeting as well before we bring it to the board. And then April is somewhat a different meeting schedule for the board. So other than this meeting, the other regularly scheduled meeting was April 23rd. So that's what we were looking at.
That's the target?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jesse? Thank you, Mr. Silva.
Thank you.
Information item 7, Energy Department General Matters. Carl Stills.
Yes, Mr. President. As you know, the IID has been working on an encroachment agreement and a GenTI agreement with Campo Verde. And in the agreement, we had requested that Campo Verde's LGIA be modified to allow ownership of the line from the fence line to the bus at IV Sub, and that IID have the same rights on Bay 17, where the GenTI was going to be connected, that it presently has on Bay 15, to which the GenTI will be moved if the PPTO is awarded to IID. Now, this move is to avoid crossing the lines as they come out of the substation. So when we cut it over for the PPTO and when we put in our IV Dixieland lines, we don't have to come out of the sub and cross. It also is a move to get us complete ownership of the line crossing the canal going north. We didn't want to own the section from the substation back to the IV sub only to the fence line and not be able to get to the bus. That would have been problematic for us. So we've requested previously in discussions with SDG&E these changes, and they had agreed in principle. But 2 weeks ago, they balked at the changes, which created a problem for us. And we've had some lengthy discussions with them over the last 2 weeks. Numerous discussions, our legal people getting together with their legal people, trying to come up with a solution. Now, if you remember back in July 17, 2012, the board voted to allow the Drew sub crossing, the southern portion. And in that crossing, there was a limiting of capacity of 800 megawatts. Now, the board discussed elevating that to 1,100 megawatts. And I believe in that discussion, they didn't feel the necessity to do that, so they voted on the 800. But I believe they talked to the GM about if that 1,100 was needed to handle it in the MOU. And I'll defer to the board's remembrance of that.
I remember it because I was opposed to the crossing, and the crossing was voted for. It had a capacity of 1,100, and to me, if you're going to let 800, you might as well maximize it out and be done with it. And it was my understanding that the general manager was given the authority to increase that to 1,100.
Well, that was my understanding, but I wanted to run that by and get clarity on that from this board, because part of our solution to get what we want on the northern crossing, to control the entire line, to be able to pay for that extra bay so that we control the expansion through our northern territory up there, is to increase that from 800 to 1,100. And if the board is okay with that, then rather than do that through an MOU, we're putting together a letter agreement for my signature to increase that expansion. So kind of seeking a little bit of direction here, but I believe that was the way that was given, the authority was given to the GM.
If that isn't reflected in the motion and the action, I believe that the clear direction was to handle it administratively.
Right.
Okay, so I do plan to initiate a letter agreement with them to solve the issue going north across the northern expansion. To me, it's more important for us to own that line, and I'm less concerned with the 800 to 1,100 capacity because the generation is already there to eat that up. The other thing that we have been doing is we've been trying to finalize the base case. We have finalized the base case for the affected system study. It is back up to 2,066 megawatts. We are having that study done. It'll take about 25 days. After that study, we'll recall for a stakeholders meeting. We'll discuss the backfeed, the station service, and the affected system study, and we'll start moving these affected system contracts forward. So you'll see probably a lot of activity over the next, after about the mid-May timeframe on that.
When would you expect to be able to use the funds from the affected study to beef up our transmission system?
As soon as they pay. We will have to tender the element agreements and work out the methodology for payment. And as soon as they pay, we should have money available that comes in on affected system to help with our transmission. I can't tell you it's going to be interactive with each different developer. But I would say for the most part, it would be somewhere after the May timeframe. Hopefully, those agreements will be pretty much pro forma, put in place, signed, and then we'll expect payment. The next issue is, it's supposedly it's not going to be a public announcement yet, but I do want to inform you that it appears we've won our first solar award. We'll be recognized by the Solar Energy Power Association's 2012 Top 10 rankings for annual watts per customer. at their SEPA's Utility Solar Conference in Portland next month. We will be sending Sabrina Barber to that so she can receive the award for IID. And then they're going to go with the announcements out to the public arena and periodicals and stuff. So that's actually a lot of progress by IID. We've also, 2 weeks ago after the Renewable Summit, or at the Renewable Summit, we had a meeting with Chairman Weissenmuller. I'm just here to tell you that that meeting is bearing a lot of fruit. He has made comments to others in the state governments that he is on board and would probably support an initiative by IID for geothermal development at the Salton Sea. So that was a very positive meeting that we had with him, and hopefully most of the state officials will start following that line of logic. And then we've received a request from CFE for emergency support for 30 megawatts of energy for the summer. And I've got our planning staff running a study on that, and I've got Ms. Valenzuela looking at it from a resource standpoint, adequacy standpoint, whether we can can in fact support this. I don't know that answer yet, but we are examining that issue. And if we do, we'll take them across at the Bravo, so we have to make sure we can get the exporting of energy across there at 30 megawatts. And that's all I have.
Board, any other questions for Carl?
I understand we used to do that with CFE years ago.
Yes.
Exchange.
Was it the same megawatts years ago, the 30 megawatts, Carl?
But it's been anywhere from 10 to whatever range. I don't think we can push more than 30. Generally, it's about 10, but it's up to 30, and it depends on their needs. It also depends on whether we, in fact, have that generation available, especially in the summer months when the temperatures are up.
Yeah.
That went into effect when I was on the board. It was the first electricity to flow from the United States into Mexico anywhere on the border.
It's my understanding their peak is a little off hours from ours anyway. Is that right?
Thank you, Carl. Okay, this. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Just regarding the solar projects that are down there, could we get an update just on the status of the different projects?
Sure, we'll put that together and bring it to the board.
And just kind of a master map. I don't know if there is one, but when people ask me about different projects, I don't have a good sense of who's behind which fence.
We have it on GIS and can bring you a project update status with a map, so we'd be happy to do that.
All right. And then any other projects, renewable energy projects, too, when we're touring people, they always ask questions. I know San Diego State started construction on their ponds, I believe.
We'll give you a complete renewable project update.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Anything else for Carl?
No.
Thank you, Carl. We're moving into the action section of the agenda. Action item 8 is the internal audit section's general matters report. Page 95 of your agenda. Betty will be presenting.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I don't have any emerging issues in the department unless any of you have any special requests from us. That's it.
Anything for Betty? Thank you, Betty. Okay, our last action item for the day, item 9, approval of amendment number 6 to service agreement number 81-935 with PSK Solutions. Mr. Villon.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. My name is Carlos Villon, Water Department. I'm back seeking approval for the PSK service agreement number 6. As we mentioned before, this is for calendar year 2013. The PSK supports 8 modules in the WIS system, 7 of which are development for the Water Department itself, 3 of which are recent developments for the fallowing program, the on-farm program, and main canal system support. These are ongoing. Issues like farm unit approaches to fallowing, apportionment, and the on-farm conservation are driving changes in these systems. We are seeking approval of this. We did have a meeting with Director Benson last Friday on the 22nd. It was a Water Department staff, IT staff, and Director Benson reviewing plans. And if we have time, I'd like to have Tony Allegranza review what he presented and what was discussed.
Good afternoon. What we wanted to do, the question was, what is the plan for doing the knowledge transfer and the database transition this year? This is the third and final year of the 3-year plan to do that. So what we went over with Director Benson was the schedule that we have, the tasks performed so far, and the people that are going to be assigned to do it. We have roughly of the hours asked for PSK solutions, about 55% of those are targeted for the IT department, the knowledge transfer and the database transition. And given that assistance, we can complete it this year. Director Benson, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that issue.
No, essentially they gave me a background of the software. One of the problems with the software, and it's not their fault, but it's just the piecemealing of how the software evolved. And then the transition to all these new systems. One of them is the SQL and how you're updating the database. And currently the database is not supported. So in order to, it's pretty important to the IID that the database does get technical support from a vendor that has a valid license. And we need to upgrade the database itself, where it resides, and they gave me a tour and showed me everything. So I'm comfortable that they need to go forward with this and get it done. You need some water, Bruce?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Jeez.
Watch out, here comes a boogie.
It's, well, first things first. I think everyone by now knows that my infamous, but this course of action was supposed to have taken, and was supposed to have happened about 12 years ago. It is no one's fault in this room. Water managers changed, general managers changed. I mean, it was just musical chairs around here. And I know that things that are priorities then get pushed to the back. And, when, I'm not trying to be facetious here, but when people get voted off this board, they're not supposed to come back, so they're not supposed to bring back this, this institutional memory. But okay, here we are, and it is what it is. But I have been assured, and we didn't allow Tony to be put in the position that he's in. And Carlos, I really did not mean anything personal last time you were here. It's just is what it is. And so I have been convinced. I mean, I've been told. I am convinced that it is, as Tony has said, that it's being transitioned, or whatever the word you want to use, to us. And that's all I ask. I don't dislike this young lady. I don't know of any consultants that work for this board for 12 years, 14 years that I've never seen before the board. That's a good gig. But and it just automatically renewed. But it's nothing personal. I think she's obviously done the job. We've been able to use the information, but I just always thought it should have been taken over by us, and I still do. It's a money thing. It's a cost-saving thing with me. That's what it was. So I am actually ready to go forward with this. And if you want it on my motion, I'll put it in form of a motion. And boy, oh boy, look at that, huh?
We have a motion from Director Kuhn, and we have a second from Director Benson for the approval of Amendment Number 6 to PSK Solutions Service Agreement. Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to know how many days of service we get for $224,000.
That amount represents 2,040 man-hours. It's a full year.
My personal feeling, when I came on the board, I was asked to go take a look at the system, and I was a swing vote. 6 years later, I'm getting old and a little cranky. You know, I think for this amount of money, we could hire someone locally, train them, keep that money here at home, and get 24/7 service. So I'm opposed to it.
Well, I again, Tony and Carlos, I'm tired of it, but I'm going to put my faith in both of you and my vote.
Thank you. What that represents, Director Hanks, is that would certainly give us a full-time person hired locally. We'd like to finish out this year with the PSK consultant because she has the knowledge that needs to be transferred. Once that transfer takes place, then it will be internalized and we will be able to support it ourselves.
Okay, any other questions, discussion?
Yeah, I would just, you know, we're either slow at learning or she's good at hanging on to what she knows. You know, this is 4 years that I can recall, actually longer than that. But I kept thinking, well, this is the last year, I'll go one more year. I'm out of years.
Okay, any other questions, board? We have a motion from Director Kuhn, a second from Director Benson. Call for the vote. Item passes 3-2. That's all for today. We're going to have a System Conservation Plan Phase 1A workshop, and we'll take a short 10-15 minute break.